Not much, but a little bit. But yeah, I have to agree. I'm an amateur radio operator. We had talked about it briefly before, and there's an event in the amateur radio world, the ham radio world, called a ham fest. And what it is basically a giant flea market for amateur radio enthusiasts to buy and sell different equipment and things like that. And a lot of people cling on to it that are like marginally associated with amateur radio, computer dealers and things like that. But I went to one of those this weekend and yesterday, as a matter of fact, at a farm show building, like an agricultural place. Man, I must have walked 10 miles. I'll tell you what, my hips, it's one of the few times my hips hurt. I traveled a lot of miles. I had a lot of fun. Got outside, like you said, it was a beautiful day. And then I came home and I'm sitting here, and ladies and gentlemen, one of the pleasures in life, I got on a brand new pair of my slippers. And I'll tell you what, this is my third pair in a row. And the difference between the one that was worn out and these brand new ones is amazing. It's like getting in a new car, man. And by the way, not sure of the relationship with Wayne, but promo code Wayne still works. Mm-hmm. So just saying, I mean, you get the discount if you use promo code Wayne.
Man, yeah, for us on the weekend, we had family dinner Thursday night, family dinner Sunday. We had hung out with some friends in a small town called Anoka, had dinner, went to the casino. It was like, and it was funny because Friday, my wife took a half day. We kind of unplugged in the afternoon, spent some time with friends. Saturday, wasn't really on the internet too much until maybe in the evening, and then checked a little on Sunday. And it's like just so good to get that day or two away to unplug. But then you log on Sunday night, and I'm like, man, look at all this dumb stuff. It's just crazy.
You know, and the thing is the issues that they're putting forward, it's so obvious that they're divisive in nature. I mean, it's just Joe Biden his campaign started running ads in Pennsylvania. And to look at the level of incompetence of these people, I mean, to sit up there and blatantly lie to people, it's like, it's unbelievable to me. It's a joke. Right. And, you know, I've seen some things around. You know, you got to remember that the uniparty lie was built on legacy media protection. And they tried to take us out several times, several different ways, because we're telling the truth and our voice is getting out there. It's really, I've seen some articles. I saw 2 of them already, and I'm looking for more that are in some of the more intellectual sites like American Thinker, stuff like that. I'm seeing articles that are asking, is the Democrat Party going to survive this election? And when you look at everything that's stacked against them, and you look at they're using 1980s tactics. These campaign ads are ridiculous, man.
Well, what's funny, too, we break down all the hoaxes. Joe Biden's political campaign for president was launched on the Charlottesville Fine People hoax, and we've broke that down. But like this weekend, I saw the clip the Biden-Harris campaign shared, and it was Donald Trump saying, I care about me, I don't care about you. And I'm like, well, that's kind of an aggressive thing to say. And then a quick search, that was a 10-second clip. The 15-second clip says, it's hot here in Arizona. I care about me being cold, not you guys, because we got to get to the voters or something like that. I mean, he was just, and then he literally, his last sentence was, but the mainstream media is going to clip that part out and they're going to run it on repeat. Sure enough, it was all over leftist internet. And you wonder when these people are going to wake up and realize they're being fooled.
You know, and the best writers on the left, it's like these people, they can't tell the truth.
Right.
They're lying to themselves. This guy named, I'm going through the stuff for the show today, show prep, and I come across this article by Zachary Carter, and it's entitled, Inflation is Not Destroying Joe Biden. And I get like 2 paragraphs into this thing, and I'm thinking, how can somebody read this? In the most preposterous corners of American economic discourse, Biden's economy is still being compared to Carter's, even though by every available metric, the 70s were in a miserable league of their own. And today's economy, listen to this, today's economy is among the most prosperous on record. Biden isn't just clearing the low bar set by the Carter administration. He's besting every other leader in the developed world, with the United States enjoying stronger wages, lower inflation, and better job growth than any nation in the G7, and its best labor market in at least half a century. I mean, huh? That's like somebody's getting paid to write that.
Right. It's pure propaganda. Inflation, folks, real inflation since Joe Biden took office is about 30%. Somewhere between 20 and 30, depending on what formula you use. But that means your $100 is worth $80 right now. And that's set, locked in. Even if inflation goes down, your $100 is still worth $80. And then they talk about the jobs market. First Friday of the month, they released the jobs report. And the headline, oh, Joe Biden added 216,000 jobs. And of course, A, that's before the revisions. But B, if you look, we lost like 400,000 or 500,000 full-time jobs, added like 600,000 part-time jobs. So if you like part-time jobs, hey, full-time jobs, it's good economy. And if you look of the million jobs he's added in the last 12 months, virtually all of them are to non-foreign born people, is what they say. So of the 8 million people they let in, like 1 million of them have got jobs. And
zero Americans.
Yeah, zero native born citizens. There's been a decrease in full-time jobs, a decrease in American citizens with jobs. And I'm no economist, but I'm smart enough to log on and read a simple report that's like 2 pages long and then look at a chart and go, okay, so full-time is down 1.2 million over 12 months. Part-time is up 2.3 million. And these political pundits that are on mainstream news that don't even bother to look at this stuff. They're handed a script that's paid for by whoever's supporting Joe Biden. And they go, yep, let me read that script. Oh, yeah, it looks great. And they think you're dumb. They don't think that when you go load your cart at the store and go to checkout and go, holy crap, I just spent $250. That used to be $150. They don't understand that you're smart enough to figure that out.
See, I don't shop like that anymore because it's just my wife and I, and we don't sit here and eat a whole lot. Once a week we have a family dinner, but other than that, I'll go get small items at the store. Like I'll go get 4 or 5 things, or a loaf of bread. Man, this weekend I went to get some cream cheese. It was $8.50. $8.50 for cream cheese. It's like this stuff's out of control. And this guy's writing about whatever he's writing about. It's like, no, you don't understand. Everybody goes to the store.
Yeah, at our Sunday family dinner, we were talking. There was like 6 of us there, and somehow I mentioned like paper towels and toilet papers because we had that shopping trip that just sucks. Where it's like, okay, I got to get laundry detergent, I got to get paper towels, I got to get some shampoo, some paper towels, and we don't get fancy stuff. And it's like you scan just your basic commodities that are going to get you through like a month or whatnot, but they all came due at once. And it's like, holy crap, that's $200. And we were joking. It's like, do you remember when you used to be able to get a roll of paper towels for like $13 and now it's like $38.50? It's
bizarre. It really is.
And like I say, these folks saying, oh, the economy is great, inflation's down. They, as normal people, whether you voted for Biden or voted for Trump, you're smart enough to look at the grocery bill and go, yeah, this isn't.
And this is one of the things they're talking about, the demise of the Democrat Party. Now, I don't subscribe to every single one of them is going to go or whatever, but it can't be a good road for them. I mean, because you've got the economy, you also have crime, big time crime. And I'll show you how an OG is dealing with this crime situation in the hood since we're unplugging a little bit.
Love it.
Chicago for you, baby. Chicago for you, baby. Old school killer. Old school killer, baby. Old school killer.
He's a cow.
I'll tell you what, man.
It's funny too about crime. So I have my buddy that lives in Minneapolis, and we got together with him on Saturday, and there was a group of us, and it was funny because he lives in Minneapolis and he voted for Joe Biden, and he was trying to say like, yeah, crime's really not that bad, and he was the one that had the vacant lot that they started getting a homeless encampment in, and luckily it didn't take off. They scattered because he was kind of far away from any businesses or whatnot. Yeah, there'd a few people pooping in the alley, but then his car got broken into, and he had like stuff get stolen out of it, and then he's like, well, it's the crime's really not bad. And then one of his buddies that hadn't seen him for a while goes, hey, how many is gunshots still a thing? He's like, no, there aren't that many. And he's like, well, how many? I don't know, like probably, 4 or 5 times a month I'll hear gunshots. And we just look around and we're like, raise your hand if you hear gunshots from your house. And he's like the only one. And,
if I hear gunshots from my house, I'm the one pulling the trigger.
well, yeah. I don't even understand what some of these guys are thinking.
They let themselves, they set themselves up, they lower the standards. That's what happens to all of our institutions, really, if you look at it.
Oh, right.
Military on down.
Yeah, it's funny. You don't enforce laws. You don't lock people up. And then suddenly crime goes nuts. Who knew?
I'll tell you, there's a phenomenon going on right now. And it's not just in the United States. It's in the entire Western world. Because I did have to do some research for today's show. We had to bring something to you, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, yeah.
But Europe has overwhelmingly voted down the globalists and the World Economic Forum types and the Green New Deal types. I mean, green zealots and liberals are the biggest losers in these mega elections. I mean, France, Macron got trounced by Le Pen to the point where he had to dissolve his government and call snap elections. It's going on all over the place.
Well, yeah, and that Macron story, did you see the people in the crowds? They were crying worse than Hillary's loss.
Yeah, I mean,
for them, it's horrible because
this is revolution, man. I mean, this is peaceful so far, but when you look at the cause of it, it's these green measures that are affecting the farmers,
right?
And the farmers in Europe, the food in Europe's not like the food here. The food here will kill you.
Yep.
But the food in Europe's important to them. I want you to look at what's going on all across Europe. That's this weekend.
Yep.
That's every one of those clips was a different country.
Well, and amazing. So you put green policies in place that make energy expensive and food harder to produce. You bring in illegal immigrants that are just flooding these nations. So you can't eat. You're not safe. And all of a sudden, you're taxing the heck out of your population. And your citizens are looking at the government like, guys, you don't have that many jobs. But making sure you stay out of the way so we can prosperously run and, quit starting wars and sending money overseas and bringing in these illegals that are just a net drain on the economy, and they're getting free food. Meanwhile, you're paying significantly more for your food. But yeah, we're going to see a right-wing wave in all the European elections.
It's good. Yeah. Regardless of what happens here.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we might. And it's interesting because, they've got the crazy lady they just elected in Mexico. And then they've got, Trudeau up in Canada, who far-right crazy leftist. And we got leftist Joe Biden. So this election, that's one of the big reasons why supporting President Trump's so important. Because we need to start fighting back against these leftist policies. And in Europe, I mean, you, me, Wayne, we all kind of follow the European news. They're spiraling down the toilet bowl faster than we are, if you can believe that. And, it's just an indication of things to come, because when the left gets out of control, you're going to have this far right swing. You think Trump's bad, wait till the one after Trump. Like it's going to be hardcore nationalism.
And I'll tell you, the mood in the country is all about that too. I know we had a conversation at the beginning of this open border. And I asked you guys if you thought that we could ever deport all these people, and both you said no. And I was skeptical myself if we had the stomach for it. But, man, that tide is turning. There's a national pullout that 62% of Americans want to deport every single illegal alien in this country.
Yep.
That's a mandate.
That's a mandate. My fear is that once Trump's talking the right policy. Let's engage local law enforcement. We start removing people and cutting off their assistance, because he's talking about states that want to continue funding illegal immigrants. He's going to cut off federal funding, which I think that's great.
Absolutely.
And then at that point, you cut off the free money and people go home. Nobody's staying for the party if there's not food and drinks. But I don't know, once they start shipping them out and you start getting all the videos coming out, it's going to be.
I think that they'll try, but I don't think it's going to matter. I think it'll be handled professionally and most importantly, quickly.
Right.
It's something that requires federal government to help. That's their bailiwick.
Yep.
It's one of the few that is. And our communities can't survive with this. I mean, you see the deal with what we talked about earlier about the jobs going to illegal aliens. That's on purpose.
Yep.
That is to remove the ability of the American people to strike or to stop. Like, if you remember, the way Poland started the end of the USSR was by a national strike, the Solidarity Movement with Lech Walesa. That's how they got rid of communism.
Yep. By
striking, by shutting the country down. And that's what they're doing in Europe right now with those farmers and the Canadian truck drivers. And I don't know if I never put ourselves in that paradigm because so many people are asleep here.
Right.
So many people have accepted that $10 an hour is really $7.
Right.
They totally accepted it and bought into it. I mean, one of the most ingenious things that the leftists ever did was withholding taxes in your wages.
Oh, yeah.
Genius thing to do, man.
Yep.
And I wish we could put that genie back in the bottle. You should have to write a check for taxes.
It's funny because some of my business partners, they're new to being self-employed. And it was the first year where you got to write that check. And then your second year, you write your quarterly checks. And for them, it's like, holy cow, I owe how many thousand to the federal government? And when you're feeling the pain of writing that check, and they're like, oh, you can just log on and you can set up auto withdrawal. And I'm like, oh, no. I write the check because I want to feel that pain of like, oh, I don't hate the government enough.
Yeah. I mean, and that's how you do it right there. Another wake-up call is when you pay off your house.
Yep.
You pay your house off. Now, all of a sudden, the taxes and the insurance are not included in the mortgage payment. Yeah. So all of a sudden, you got to write those two checks out too.
Right. Yeah, and you don't even know how much your property tax is when it's just in your mortgage. You just, my mortgage went up a little bit this month. But when you're pulling out that checkbook and going, how much am I paying the county? And why do I got potholes in the street?
I got to save this for 6 months to have enough to pay it in one payment.
Right.
I mean, it's a little ridiculous. And it's not just one check. It's like county, city, state. It's like, holy smokes.
Right.
When does this stuff end? But I was really happy to see that poll, 62%. And I didn't get the video, but it was on Face the Nation. And Margaret Brennan was the pundit. And she was stunned, man. She really was. These people are in a bubble.
Right. Yeah, well, right now it's the elites versus the normal people. And thanks to platforms like Twitter and Rumble, word's getting out. Like, did you see those weekend protests in DC?
Yeah,
where there was
Palestinians.
There were Palestinians. They were defacing monuments. They were
throwing smoke bombs at cops.
Yeah, the police had to retreat at some point. And average citizens, as they see this debauchery, your brain can't help but make the conclusion, like, so let me get this straight. January 6 people, they're still arresting. They've been in jail for years at this point. And these folks can do that. There was no arrest made. Like, how does this make any sense? These are foreign nationals who are protesting. And, like, their protest chants are horrible. They're saying, like, from the river to the sea. Yeah. Things that, and
the Obama staffers are making excuses for it.
Right.
They're in the White House. They have the right to protest. Right. But Americans with Trump hats don't.
Right.
This isn't going to end well.
It isn't going to end well. And it's like this weekend too, and last week, that all these pride murals they painted on streets in like 3 different big cities in America. You've had people doing spin outs and burnouts on them, and they're all getting charged with like felonies.
Right.
And you can burn the American flag on the sidewalk next to where the pride mural is, and they will salute you as that's your freedom of speech, and you're speaking to power. But if you do a burnout on a scooter on the pride mural right next door, you get a felony charge.
And I don't know what happened. The FBI is now the homosexual police, I think.
Right.
Because what they're doing, they just grabbed a guy who was a whistleblower at a hospital that blew the whistle on some nefarious situations with children's surgeries.
Right.
And the FBI's got him.
Right.
It's like the FBI's mission is trannies now. It's disgusting.
Well, if you happen to believe that deviant sexual behavior is part of their leverage to control people, I mean, Jeffrey Epstein, one of my friends bought it. Like, we were talking about Jeffrey Epstein, and she found a book. It's Jim's mom, and she read it. She's like, "Oh man, they killed Epstein, and they got blackmail on hundreds of people." And I'm like, "Yeah, can you believe nobody's been prosecuted?" And she's like, "That's insane. Like, why are they locking up?" And this is a Democrat. She's like, "Why are they locking up January 6 people when these rich and famous people that went and committed pedophilia on islands, like, they aren't even charged?"
I'll tell you, I don't want to open this can of worms. I'm not going to. Never mind.
You can't leave me hanging.
What's that woman's name that was locked up in Russia in the WNBA? Briner?
Brittany Griner.
That's a dude.
That's a dude. Yeah.
That's a dude.
Did you see the video of her shooting baskets in a pool?
I didn't see that, but I heard him talk, and that's a dude.
Right.
I'm sorry. There's no question. He's the same as Leah Thomas.
Right.
It's unbelievable what we're doing to this country, man. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, we probably can't play the video on some of these platforms, but it was going around social media. She was at a pool party, shirtless, shooting baskets. There was no chest.
I mean, he's sitting there talking, going, yeah. I'm like,
right.
No, that doesn't work.
And just think of that, too. People are okay with the fact that we traded one of the world's worst terrorists, that is one of the biggest arms dealers ever, to Russia for a basketball player. And they think that's great.
That's so genius. He took weed to Russia.
Right.
That's a genius right there. That's locked up abroad stupidity.
Right.
I used to love that show.
Oh.
It was scary, though, because you knew they were getting nailed every time.
Right.
And some of them get into it, and they, thought it was going to be all nice, and they tried to back out. No, you ain't backing out.
You ain't backing out. You're part of this now. Congratulations.
Wow. Yeah, that was something else.
That's what we need in America, because all these videos keep coming out of all the folks going, "Oh, Trump's going to lock people up." Yes, I hope so. I pray.
And that brings me to, I was going to save this, but I'll dive into this right now. Donald Trump did an interview with Dr. Phil. And it was a great interview. Up until the end, it was a good interview.
Yep.
But I'll tell you, it makes me wonder, is Dr. Phil an asset of the government too? Because at the end, he did the same thing Sean Hannity did and tried to talk Trump out of doing that. You could be a hero. We need a hero right now, and you could be that guy if you just say it all stops here. It all ends. No, Dr. Phil, you don't understand.
No,
you don't get it. The only way you stop this is to make it too painful to do again.
Right.
It's not about retribution. It's about, well, maybe it is about retribution. I don't know what the definition of retribution is exactly, but it's about punishment. Right. Crime and punishment is what it's about. And that's where we got to go with this. And talking him out of it. He doesn't have to go out and do it himself. Right. There were crimes committed.
Yes.
All you have to do is notify the authorities, fix the authorities, get rid of the political hacks in the Justice Department, a large amount of them, and start over. Bring your own people, like every other president except you, bring all your own people in.
Yep. Well, and you got to root out all the trash in the Department of Justice, all the people who are prosecuting people that oppose the regime. It's not even they're just going after Republicans. There just aren't any people on the left going after the regime. And then after that, you move into the media, because those media propagandists, for them to go on and call themselves news programs, that's got to be against some kind of law. Some lawyer somewhere can figure out how you getting on and lying about stuff is. I mean, people tune in this show, they know we offer opinion. But when they tune into CNN, they think that this is news. And that's why so many people believe it. Like, oh, I saw it on the news. That's got to be true.
I've said many times that I don't think the battle to silence them is a losing battle.
Correct.
It should be.
Yep.
But it's not untouchable. CNN should not be allowed to call themselves news.
Right.
If you this show had just like a sexually explicit scene or something, a trigger warning or something like that needs to accompany these shows. This is not a news show. This is a leftist opinion show.
Right.
Or something of that nature, just to denut them.
Well, and that's the thing is, people don't understand. Like I explained that clip from the Trump rally. They don't know they're being gamed. And this isn't even a good game. This wasn't even getting into high-tech stuff like AI or whatnot. They literally clip out 10 of a 15-second clip. Here's a 10-second. See, Trump did something bad. Now let's all complain about it. And I don't know how long, as people continue waking up, and you see with these criminal charges, all the time, there's more interviews of people that like, I don't know what happened, but Trump going to jail for paying a porn star to like not say anything. Our politicians done far worse than that. Like, let's talk COVID,
And I'm not even sure, like the conventional wisdom is that Trump did that.
Right.
And I've seen some reports that I don't even know if Trump did that, because you had Cohen that was cozying up to Horseface, trying to get it. And maybe he did it because that's where the money came from. I don't know. I just, it's such a non-starter for me, the whole thing.
Non-disclosure agreements, if we want to make those illegal, let's start with the House and Senate funds that are taxpayer funded for sexual harassment claims that we don't even get to see who got paid out from which person. It's a secret private fund for the government. It's insane. And
it's been used several times.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is
hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, a lot of money. A lot of money. And that whole town, man, it's all designed. It's all designed to get these people to do what they want, what the deep state wants them to do. And it's highly effective.
Oh, yeah.
It's something I wish I didn't know.
Isn't that the funny thing, too, when you sit around with like normal people that don't know some of this stuff? And
makes you shake your head.
And you're like, God, I wish I was like you and didn't realize how corrupt the government was, how corrupt these prosecutions were, how in danger our monetary system is, how I wish
the electrical grid, the food supply. I mean, it just goes on and on. The attacks by our government to our infrastructure. It's like, what is the end game here, guys?
Right. Well, and it's just the elites and the corporate oligarchy has been buying our politicians for decades now. And then they cozy up with the intelligence community, and it creates this that's the definition of the swamp. And I don't know what your fix is other than going in, shutting down about 70% of the federal government, eliminating a bunch of the overlap of these departments. I mean, you unemploy a lot of federal government officials, and it's crazy. All right. Should we bring on the NFSC?
I think we should.
Giddy up. Give me one sec. We got Max Young here.
Hey, everyone. How's it going?
All right, Max. Nice to meet you.
Here.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure to meet you guys as well. And it's an absolute honor to share my thoughts with you on your show.
All right. So I take it that you've been attending the court proceedings as well?
That's correct.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Max, before we get started.
Yeah, absolutely. So this actually is my second time on the Wayne Dupree show. The first time you may have seen me tuning in live from Phoenix, Arizona during
Yeah.
the AmFest, and I just want to reiterate my love for America as a country and why I believe in its core values. Me personally, I am from Canada, and I've been following NFSC for approximately a year by now. Last year, I joined the protests against the CCP and its persecution of innocent civilians in my local neighborhood and neighboring neighborhoods as well. They really did a number on the safety of the neighborhoods, and I felt like it was a good time to stand out alongside many of my fellow fighters as well. So it's been a year, about a year's journey now, which led me to today, and we're sitting here to discuss the trial of Mr. Miles Gore here in the Southern District of New York.
Before we do that, just back up a little bit. Are you talking? Talk to us a little bit about what you mean about. I'm guessing you mean Canadian neighborhoods.
That's correct.
What exactly is going on there? This is new.
Yeah, sure. So back then, in about a year ago, the reason why I joined the protest was because it had been caught on RCMP attention that there were CCP secret surveillance bases and secret police stations being set up in Canadian neighborhoods. There were also the presence of spies in the neighborhoods who have been, through their own means, extraditing Canadian citizens who were standing against the CCP back to China. And to my understanding, that they have been, quote unquote, disappeared and their entire family has been captured. The classic CCP tactic where you just don't hear anything from them, their family. You can only assume that they've been jailed or worse.
You know, and before we get into the trial, Max, you bring an interesting perspective with Canadians because they are ahead of us on the path to being overtaken by communists, it looks like, with all the socialist programs, wealth distributions. How bad was it living in Canada? Because from us here in the States, I look up there and I'm like, they're criminalizing speech now. I mean, all the tactics they're using are the tactics that we see starting in America and just picking up steam. Miles, persecution, prosecution is a prime example.
Yeah, absolutely. And I still lived in Canada to this day. I'm just visiting the States for this specific trial. I can tell you from my personal opinion, Miles definitely brought up a lot of light to the infiltration of communist ideologies and their whole handbook towards the Canadian people. To put it broadly, I would say it's rough living under these conditions as a honest middle class worker coming from a middle class family. And I think people have been feeling the struggle more and more in recent years due to all the implementations and the laws that have been passed on. And I believe that these laws were passed on in order for the CCP and other infiltrations to destabilize the economy.
It looked like they're doing a good job of it. Let's go to the courthouse. What's going on there?
Absolutely. So I believe last week, one of my colleagues, Jackson, had given you guys a rundown of all the witnesses that were brought up. I believe one of the more recent ones was a woman who was a supporter named Yali, who went by the online alias of Mulan. And preceding her was another woman named Jenny Lee. And these were all like, this is all public information, as many of you know, but I can give you guys a more descriptive representation of what actually happened in court. So this person, Mulan, just to recap, was one of Miles's most trusted advisors. She was one of the earliest supporter of Miles. And because of her expertise in accounting, Miles put her in charge of a lot of different chapters of the NFSC. So for example, she was the director of the Rule of Law Foundation. She was one of the directors of the Rule of Law Foundation. She also had the privilege of forming her own chapter called the G Translators, where they would translate documents, legal documents per se, for Miles and his cause. And she was also a farm leader as well, which meant that she was able to have jurisdiction over a select chapter of the NFSC. So her presence ran deep in the NFSC, and it was definitely a very hard sight to see her in court testifying against Mao's Guo.
Yeah, I gotta say it as I look at these witnesses, because what are they up to? Like their 12th witness today for the prosecution, and all this stuff appears to be some sort of financial crimes they're accusing Miles of, and everything comes back. They're taking a bunch of stuff out of context, but he's been in jail for months over financial crimes, and you're in New York City, where if you kill a cop, you're let go in about 35 seconds.
Absolutely, yeah. The nature of these crimes are all white collar, and it's been a very lengthy prosecution. Today, actually, we've reached about the 14th witness now.
Oh my God!
But just going back on Mulan, because I believe she is a very, very interesting witness that the government brought on, because it pertains to the indictments that Miles has been charged with, the counts of conspiracy to create fraud, like have a fraudulent scheme essentially. And it's because she was able to link all the entities together as the wire transfers goes from one entity to another. And now I want to dive in because the prosecution painted a very specific portrayal of her. Repeatedly during the direct, she was repeating that she only did this because she trusted Mao. She had full faith in Mao's. But it was very interesting because when the cross-examination began, we began to realize that this was a very, very intricate and meticulous person. She had a master's in accounting and was constantly doing legal work, taxes for industries, for businesses, for small businesses. And this is work that you can't just put over the excuse of negligence for failure to comply with certain rules and regulations. And a lot of the things that she said was more so contradictory to her own testimony. And if you'll let me, I want to read out a bit of a transcript. Is that all right?
Sure.
Go
Absolutely.
for it.
So this is part of the transcript that occurred last week on Thursday, I believe. And this was regarding her non-prosecution agreement. So if people are just tuning in, so Yali was offered a non-prosecution agreement by the prosecution team to not charge her of her crimes in regard to this case and her involvement. So I'll read it out and you can infer it as a question by the defense and an answer by Mulan. So the question was, and they decide if you're telling the truth or not in reference to the non-prosecution agreement. No. Really? When you met with them, and she interrupted, I decide myself. The question was, you decide yourself? And she says, yes. So you decide if you're telling the truth, and if they decide you're lying, all that matters is that you're telling the truth. She says, no. So it matters that what they think about what you are saying, correct? And she says, no. And one last question. When you met with them in the proffer sessions, each time they talk to you, they have told you to tell them the truth, right? And she answered, no. So I think it's up to the interpretation to really question the validity of her statements during that testimony, and if she is truly telling the truth and nothing but the truth.
Well, it's the nature of these RICO cases to try to tie everything together like that.
Absolutely.
Then I guess what they have to determine, or what you have to debunk, is that the issues that they're talking about are crimes. So hopefully that works out. I'm not a lawyer, but I have followed some of these these things. Does it seem like, let me phrase this right, the FBI has a lot of history in entrapment. It's their number one tactic, it seems. Is there any indication that Mulan is being pressured in any external way that made her flip like this?
To my knowledge, not as of now. I am not exactly in the know for that, but it definitely did feel like she was flip-flopping between two sides. She was a completely different person when she was being questioned by the direct, as in she was answering everything with the exact date, with the exact counts. And as soon as it got to the cross, it seemed like she employed a completely different tactic of saying, I don't know, I don't remember, I don't recall, to every single one of the questions that was asked by the defense team in an effort to sway them from being able to ask further questions. And but it did defer them from being able to dive into some of the content, but it also painted a picture to the juror that, you know, she's showing two sides, one to the direct, one to the cross, and if her testimony is truly on a solid foundation.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, because when I read a lot of these court transcripts, I try to put myself in the jurors box, and it sounds like what you're describing is that when the prosecution has her up there, she's reciting the speech they gave her. Hey, I made a deal with you. You're not going to prosecute. Let me answer all your questions exact. And then you get to the defense, and the defense starts asking questions like, I don't remember what day it is. I don't remember putting on pants today. I couldn't tell you nothing. And so they give the defense no angle to even pursue any relevant questioning. And I think as a juror, and you've been sitting in the courtroom, it's got to come off as horribly disingenuous, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And the same went for the witness prior to her. Her name was Jenny Lee, and it seemed to, as a a juror's perspective, someone who was observing the case, it seemed to be that she was purposely being very, very difficult during the cross-examination. Some might even say that it was a tactic employed by the witness to really boggle the defense's examination, a valid examination of her as a witness. And I just have to say that although it definitely did sway the defense team, they did an amazing job at pointing out the fact that these people are not the negligent kind. These people are not
Right.
doing this just because they blindly believed in Mao's Goa.
Right. So I guess we're getting closer to wrapping up the prosecution's witnesses. Does our team have a bunch of witnesses coming next?
So yeah, we are getting close. As you people may know, we are getting closer and closer to the 17th witness, who will be the final witness for the government side. And after that, we can expect the witnesses to be brought on by the defense team. And as of now, we aren't sure of the scope of the witnesses and who they intend to bring on, but it has been moving quicker these past few days. And today, after Mulan, I just want to quickly brief on which of the witnesses that the government called upon, to just give you guys an idea, inspection of the content that was talked about in court these days. So after Mulan, I believe it was a car dealer who sold Bugattis, and it was a very, very quick and swift, direct and cross. After that was an FBI agent who was responsible for taking the photos during the search and arrest warrant of Miles Goa's 18th floor Sherry apartment. And today it was we finished the cross-examination of that person, and we went on to the 13th witness, who was a Ferrari dealership, so who also sold Ferraris to the parties in interest. So essentially, finally, on the 14th witness, I think we're getting a bit more substance. He was a mortgage banker, and he did a lot of investments. And he was actually working for GTV and Soraka at the time, as a part for Miles Goa and Yvette Wan. And what's interesting about this person is that he was also offered a non-prosecution agreement. And it seemed to me that this person was more or less a career white-collar violator, because while during the testimony, he was read out a bunch of his crimes from before. He was even asked, did you commit crimes while you were working for GTV? To which he answered yes. Did you commit crimes before you worked for GTV? And he answered yes. And there were perhaps 3 or more instances where he was committing either tax evasion or fraud in the financial sense of his own accord before he worked for GTV or before he even had contact with Mao's in 2018. So that was the current state of the court before reporting to you guys here today. It was during the direct that all these were revealed. So this is very interesting.
It's funny too, because it sounds like President Trump, we were very critical of when he hired some bad people like Michael Cohen. Turns out he shouldn't have been hired. It sounds like Miles' companies might have been infiltrated with people that maybe weren't the best people, and then they were able to get leverage by the intelligence community. And then all the people that were the real criminals, they all get plea deals, they all get non-prosecution agreements, they all get a free pass. Meanwhile, Miles they're going to, because how many years prison time is he facing? Isn't it hundreds of years?
Indeed. When you add it up, it's over 100. Each count of actual fraud that is indicted upon him is at 20 years maximum. And he has 12 counts total. Some of them may be less than 20 years, but for the most part, each count has been a 20-year maximum sentence. So yeah, absolutely. We're looking at a pretty harsh punishment for his involvement in everything. So, and I absolutely agree, because it's just the nature of these organizations, these political parties at this time. You can never be too sure about the people, if they're working for you, if they are sent to infiltrate or they truly have intentions to help the cause.
That seems to be happening a lot lately. It's pretty much the way they operate. So what should we look forward to toward the end of the week? What's going on? How are you guys feeling? What are you talking about? What should we look for?
Yeah, absolutely. So towards the end of the week, I mean, the week has just started, and I believe by the next update, we should be looking forward to perhaps the defense bringing on their first couple witnesses, maybe a conclusion to the government's prosecution witnesses and who they decide to bring on and what kind of picture that they decide to portray, I'd say. I think it has been very interesting to just view the execution of arguments in terms of how the prosecution has decided to relay this information. And in the case of Mulan, there has been a lot of very emotional appeal. There was lots of crying in the court. There was lots of mention of self-harm and all this stuff. And it's just very interesting to see the execution. That's all I can say.
Well, it was great to have you on, Max. Give us a breakdown of where we can follow you, if you have any social media you want to call out, where we can follow the trial updates, and kind of where people can stay in the know until we have you guys back on Thursday.
Absolutely. And it's my pleasure and honor to be on part of your show, being able to spread what live updates of Mr. Miles Guo's trial. So you can find me personally on Getter. I'm sure your viewers may be familiar with the Getter platform as NFSC MVX. You can follow along on our official NFSC Twitter account called NFSC Speak and our Getter account called NFSC Speaks with an S. And when I was reading at the official transcript, these official transcripts are published live at a very timely manner every single day on our official website called nfscofficial.com. We post all the transcripts as soon as we get them, and the viewers can follow along with this case as well. And I just want to reiterate one more time, just thank you so much for your platform. And I really, truly believe that we need to reinvigorate the American spirit. There's a reason why America was founded as one of the greatest nations. It's because of the core values and the core beliefs that we have been built this land upon. And it is a privilege to be here to witness the court of law, because you know how it is in China. This procedure would have never even happened. And we're very hopeful that Miles can prove his innocence in court. But in China, it's a completely different story. And it's important for us to stand up for our freedoms and rights, because it is a very slippery slope. And as you said yourself, there has been lots of attempts to infiltrate this system that we built. And we just don't want to end up like the totalitarian regime that is the CCP.
Thank you, Max. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Boom.
There you go. Let's face it, the current geopolitical situation isn't great. And under this administration, the economy hasn't exactly inspired confidence. As a result, Americans like you are concerned about their retirement savings, and for good reason. But there's good news. Gold has held its value since the dawn of mankind and is mentioned in every book of the Bible from Genesis through Revelation. As a faith-driven precious metals company, Genesis Gold Group helps Americans protect their life savings from the threats facing our nation. And here's what I love about them. They don't do gimmicks like the big gold companies and insult your intelligence with absurd claims of $10,000 in free silver. Instead, they actually want customers to be fully aware of all options, not just the ones that benefit the seller, and they educate you all along the way. And this is where I blew it again. I'm going to need some help. Get your free definitive gold guide to get you started and learn more about investing in gold and protecting your retirement from uncertain times. Visit
treasureandtrust.com
and fill out the basic contact form, and a member of the team will be in touch. Again, that's one more time.
treasureandtrust.com.
treasureandtrust.com. Over to you.
Giddy up. You know, it's funny where you talk about the financial implication and people protecting themselves, because I got to say, between now and the election, no matter who wins, I think it's going to be President Trump, but even if it's Joe Biden, we're going to get lulled into this feeling of comfort, right? Where, okay, but, you know, things are more expensive, but I can still buy stuff. And okay, you can't really afford a house, but hey, everybody's, you know, kind of got a place. After the election, it is going to be economic difficulties, to say the least, no matter who wins. If you believe in the Uniparty, they're going to do everything they can to make sure we don't hit that wall before the election. They're going to drain the strategic oil reserve. They're going to keep printing money. They're going to keep doing all these things that they've done. But after the election, we've got the debt ceiling thing. At some point, we got to refill the strategic oil reserve, because we're just, I mean, we're in like the barrels are on empty. And I think that's what'll be interesting as we get into this fall season. I don't think the economic collapse, or unless BRICS triggers, which they're already talking about, and especially as we're getting more aggressive in Russia and Ukraine and with stuff going on over in Israel. But, you know, folks, make sure that you meet with your financial planner, that you look at different sources for different ways to diversify, because having all your money tied up in a dollar bill, it's already worth less, but it's just going to get worse.
Yeah, it is. And that's really by design. So what we got to do when we get into times like this, sometimes you have to unplug.
Excuse me, sir.
You have to every now and then. Yeah, I mean, it's hard times, man. You got to lighten up every now and then, or your heart will blow up.
Yeah, I was going to say that's been the fun part in the chat today, especially the Facebook chat I've been watching. And people are talking about what they did on the weekend and things they did. And I think a lot of people tuned into the show because, like, while we get serious when we try to cover things that are going on, you know, you don't want to be all doom and gloom, you know, just because the country's going off the ravine. we elect President Trump, we deport 8 million illegals, we fire 2/3 of the government, like things will be okay.
Start drilling a little bit, get some of
Yeah.
that gas out, put a couple nuclear plants up, get some
Right.
refineries going. I said for years they ought to take Detroit and they ought to turn it into the refinery capital of the world.
100%.
They could get all that oil from Canada and everywhere else, North Dakota, and refine it. We could send it out in gasoline. We don't have to send it down to a refinery in Louisiana.
Well, right. And in Detroit, there's all kinds of infrastructure up there. For houses for people to live that have been vacant for a long time, from all sorts of manufacturing plants. I mean, something like that would be a great idea. And it's funny to say that, because that's when, if you're a business person, you're going to say, okay, where can I build stuff where there's already things that I can repurpose instead of starting over? And that's why getting the government involved is so bad, because the government's like, they don't even factor in any of that stuff when they're making decisions.
No, that you're right. They don't. They don't. It's. I was part of that, man, and I'll tell you, it's frustrating.
Right.
The decision making is dead.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really bad. It is. But yeah, I think if I was going to spearhead this refinery project, which I honestly think we should do, and I think we should probably even get. There's some good training available for our engineers in the military that could get out here and get their hands dirty and knocking down some of these buildings and rebuilding other ones and things like that. It's perfect training. Why they don't do that is beyond me. But at any rate, what you would have to do is you would have to realize what you're doing. And when I say that is the first step would have to be rehab.
Yep.
You would have to get people into rehab. You have to go get somebody that Donald Trump appoints or Donald Trump himself to go into Detroit and talk to Detroit and say, look, you guys want to be a city where you can make $35 an hour in the factory? Yes or no?
Right.
Well, then line up, because there's going to be amnesty when it comes to drug use, but you got to get through this rehab first. Turn it around night and day.
Right.
Crime goes away. I mean, it's going to be better to be in a job than it is to be slinging crack.
Well, yeah, and it's funny because there's such a brain dead mentality on the left where they want to raise minimum wage for fast food workers. Folks, fast food, and all that's happened is there's been, and I saw a bunch of recaps coming out this weekend, just hundreds of thousands, of people being laid off. Now, if you compare that to actually creating an industry like an oil refining industry, and then all the subsequent businesses that support that, I mean, you'll get people starting shipping companies or just to distribute things in and out, or parts for in the factories, and those are all good paying real jobs.
And you do it with the culture as well.
Right.
You can win the culture, or you can beat back in the culture war, just like. You could do it just like the military does it.
Right.
If you're military and you're single, you get paid this much. If you're married, you get paid this much.
Right.
So give them an incentive to get married.
Right. And stay married. I mean, some countries have started saying if you're married and have like at least 5 kids, you don't pay taxes forever.
Oh, there you go. Something.
And it's interesting too, because as soon as we cut off this taxing and spending, but some of these folks don't understand either. That's one problem. If you start making $35 an hour, it doesn't feel like that much because your taxes go up so much. And I've talked about it on the show. One of my buddies used to make 45 grand a year. I did his taxes. He paid $0 in federal income taxes. One year he doubled it. He got up to 90 grand. He paid $10,000 a year net effective. That's how much that the government kept. And if you keep going up from there, it gets worse. So that first 45,000 you don't pay any taxes on after the deductions. The second 45,000 you only get to keep 35,000 of it. And as you go up beyond there, and some of these jobs are talking about $35 an hour, it's not going to feel like that because the tax rate is so bad.
And speaking of taxes, President Trump had a rally in Las Vegas this weekend, last night, I guess, right? Yesterday afternoon. And he talked about taxes. I thought this was great.
This is the first time I've said this, and for those hotel workers and people that get tips, you're going to be very happy, because when I get to office, we are going to not charge taxes on tips, people making tips. We're not going to do it, and we're going to do that right away, first thing in office, because it's been a point of contention for years and years and years, and you do a great job of service. You take care of people, and I think it's going to be something that really is deserved. More importantly, popular or unpopular. I do some unpopular things, too, if it's right for the country. I do what's right. But so those people that have jobs in restaurants, whatever the job may be, a tipping job, we're not going after for taxes anymore. This will be ended. And I announced that for the first time I've brought it up. First time anyone's brought it up. I think it's never been brought up before, and I also think it's very appropriate.
It's a pretty big deal. I mean, you could hear that was some genuine cheering by waiters and waitresses.
Oh, yeah. Well, as a society, we need to get to the point where every time we do a financial transaction, that the government gets a piece of it. And if you trade a good and service, I go to my dog groomer this week and I take the dogs in. She does a haircut for my dogs. I don't know why the federal government needs to get a piece of that. I don't know why the state government needs to get a piece of that, or the county or the city you live in. We've just accepted. I mean, we revolted from Britain for a couple % tax on tea. You know, that was one of the driving factors. And now your effective tax rate in most states, and Minnesota's high, but if you say, okay, I make eight or I make $100,000 a year, let's say, by the time I pay my federal income tax, Social Security, 50%. All those taxes, and then when you count on the taxes I pay when I spend my money, like half your income's going to the government. It's just unsustainable. And
it's evil too. It's evil, right, to give them that much money. You see what happened. You saw what happened in California when they raised the minimum wage for fast food and whatnot.
Right.
You got an exodus, people getting laid off, people getting fired. The people don't understand this. These Democrats, right yesterday or Friday, a Democrat representative in the state house proposed raising Pennsylvania's minimum wage to $20 an hour.
Oh my!
It's only 7 something now. Right. They wanted to raise it to 20 something. Say goodbye to McDonald's, Pennsylvania. Right. I mean, this isn't going to work.
Well, and it's this mentality, and part of it's because we just train our kids so poorly. And it's this mentality that, oh, corporations are evil, which I hate corporations, but we've created a system where the government just they train you to go be a corporate worker. They tax you the hell out of you. And then the money goes to poor folks, and to live on, you have to give them public assistance. It's just this vicious cycle where they're buying and selling each other off. But when you keep raising minimum wage as a business, you are not going to eat that cost. You're either going to say, okay, can I raise my prices so then that makes you and I pay more, or can I just no longer profitably operate? And if I can't profitably operate, let's just shut it down. And that's what's happening in California. So the places that stay open, congratulations, you'll go pay $18 for your Happy Meal. And the locations that close, like those people are out of work, that's going to kill it. And where the location's going to close? Inner cities. They're going to be closing in high theft areas, high crime areas, because you already have a tighter margin because of all those externalities. And then at the end of the day, they're going to be complaining like, oh, why is there no fast food restaurants in the hood? And it's like, well, you want to pay everybody $20 an hour. Like,
and the acceptance, like you said, that the American people accept this. I've already said I'm a radio enthusiast, right? So I listen to police radio, public service scanner type material all the time. And a big part of I guess this lasted until the early 2000s, maybe it was a little bit before that. But out in rural Pennsylvania, townships and little boroughs don't have police departments because they can't afford it. They don't have enough taxpayers to have a full-time police officer. So a lot of them rely on the state police, the vast majority of Pennsylvania. And I used to scan them all. I had all the state police frequencies. You give these tyrants too much money. Pennsylvania spent $6 billion on a communication system that citizens cannot hear.
Seriously.
And that is, I call them the Pennsylvania secret police. You cannot hear what they're saying. And they were very professional. I mean, I used to love listening to them, and I would help them if I could, but now they just took that all out. And that's what happens when you give them too much money. $6 billion for a radio system for police against their citizens.
Well, and just think of that too. I understand if you don't want people to hack into it so the criminals can't do that, but I have zero trust in the government. And every time you give them any power to do anything, the more it decreases. Like government has never not taken the power we've given them and abused it, and we saw it with the Patriot Act. That's the most famous one because most everybody on the show back when that came out, it's like, oh, this is great. We need to do this. And if you opposed it, you were a terrorist sympathizer or whatnot.
Yeah, they played that well.
Look, I mean, there's no accountability by law enforcement to these folks. It's crazy.
They become the criminals.
They have become the criminals.
I mean, the behavior is mob-like.
Right.
It just is. I mean, it's right in front of you, right in your grill, as Steve Bannon, who's going to jail, would say.
Oh, my God. Think of that. Steve Bannon, and you still got Peter Navarro in jail.
In his 70s. These people have no shame, no dignity, no nothing.
For defying the January 6th committee. And every time you turn around, if you're on alternative media, you see another story coming out. I mean, it came out this weekend that Milley was involved in the January 6th cover-up, where he
absolutely
right.
He was probably the most involved.
Right. And then there was testimony that's been leaked about people asking for the National Guard, and hey, it turns out Trump really asked for that.
By the National Guard legal people are the ones saying that.
Yeah. And Cassidy Hutchinson, the Secret Service agent that would have been the person Trump would have assaulted. The January 6th committee lets her come out in her little white suit and give the speech about how Trump was going to take over the beast and drive to the Capitol. And the very person that was there when it happened, they wouldn't let testify. No cover up at all.
There was a vote in Congress, and the majority of House Democrats voted to take away guns from certain veterans. Let me just give you a little background here. When I get my health care from the VA, and I have to pay a copay every month, and there's a form on pay.gov that I have to fill out every month to make this payment. A lot of our veterans are up in years, or maybe they have injuries to their hands or their eyes that make them where they can't make these payments themselves, and maybe their brother or their son. There's a place in the form that if you're helping a veteran, you fill out your information. If you did any of that, they're trying to take your guns away. They're trying to say that you're mentally unfit. Yeah, I saw this coming for years. And the bad part about these communists is there's veterans out there right now. There's combat veterans out there that did a lot more combat than me, that have problems with PTSD and will never seek to get help because they know if they do that, they're taking their guns away. And this is, the VA just goes in front of a judge. They don't take this to, it's the VA doing it. And they're putting a red flag on these people. Something like, let's see. And there was 2 Republicans that voted against it. Tom McClintock, I think that's Thor, and Matt Rosendale of Montana voted against the veterans.
Wow.
I mean, there was 4 Democrats that voted with the veterans. I'm trying to find these numbers. Okay. This would prevent the VA from disarming an estimated 20,000 veterans during the next fiscal year. There was a big total somewhere. I can't find it right now. I won't hold you, but they've done this to a lot of people already. And just think of that veteran that won't get help because of these tyrants.
Well, if you look, part of the reason why we've never been invaded, why the country is secure, is the Second Amendment. And the Second Amendment was crystal clear, where it shall not be infringed. And it was designed to protect you against, against risks, foreign and domestic. And it was designed to keep the government in line. Why do you think the government wants to find excuses to disarm veterans? And the veterans 20 years ago, 30 years ago, are way different than the leaders serving in the military today. Because if things get wild and people keep ignoring the Constitution, the people on the front lines are going to be these veterans. And they're people that love their country, that took their oath to this country seriously. And it makes total sense that they'll want to disarm those folks.
250,000 since Bill Clinton instituted this.
It's insane. God, I didn't realize it was that bad.
Who do you think owns the ARs?
Right.
The veterans.
Exactly.
Because they were deeply involved with ARs in their whole life.
Right.
You know, but I just saw that and I was like, a hero of that is Eli Crane. I think he's from Arizona. Eli Crane, former Navy SEAL, walks the walk. He's the one that was a Crane amendment to get him to stop that. And Biden has said he'll veto it because of that. So we'll see what happens.
Oh, my gosh. Hey, speaking of which, Hutch, I got to talk about a little beef here. Folks may not realize, but America's food supply is under attack. Beef is the primary target, with everything from climate change to bird flu being wielded against cattle. It behooves Americans to stock up on long-term storage beef, and we've got the solution here on the Wayne Dupree podcast. Preparewithbeef.com, veteran-owned company that sells premium steaks with a 25-year shelf life. Ribeye, strips, tenderloin. They don't just sell beef crumbles or beef chunks. They do freeze-dried steak chunks. Pretty awesome. It's an excellent addition to your already hopefully you have your survival food starting going. At preparewithbeef.com, listeners of the Wayne Dupree podcast get 25% off with promo code RVM. Stock up now before cricket burgers become a thing by going to preparewithbeef.com using promo code RVM. And shout out to our fans on Red Voice Media. We're into week 2 of them being relaunched, rvmnews.com. They're already getting shows lined up. They got Sean on there. They got Drew Berquist on there. Great place to tune in. And the Wayne Dupree podcast, we're happy to be on part of that network.
There you go. I'll tell you, it's rare when these people tell you exactly what they're doing. I have a clip right now that should make your blood boil. This is the warmonger from South Carolina that should not be anywhere near government. This guy is a cancer to our side. And I want you to listen. Notice he's not talking about Ukraine's freedom.
Right.
Or tyrannical rule or anything like that. Look why Senator Lindsey Graham wants to start World War III. It's despicable.
What did Trump do to get the weapons flowing? He created a loan system. They're sitting on $10 to $12 trillion of critical minerals in Ukraine. They could be the richest country in all of Europe. I don't want to give that money and those assets to Putin to share with China. If we help Ukraine now, they can become the best business partner we ever dreamed of. That $10 to $12 trillion of critical mineral assets could be used by Ukraine and the West, not given to Putin and China. This is a very big deal how Ukraine ends. Let's help them win a war we can't afford to lose. Let's find a solution to this war. But they're sitting on a gold mine to give Putin $10 or $12 trillion of critical minerals that he will share with China is ridiculous.
This guy's sick, man. He's a psychotic moron.
I remember growing up, Hutch, and I remember I was trailer park trash, poor white boy, and loved the country, and they sent guys like me to go die in some desert. Generally, it all tied back to oil and money. And now, you see 20, 30 years later, we've evolved. Now we're going into these ruthless wars, and it's only the start where we're just sending money, and we're killing off generations of Ukrainians. But now we're discovering the truth of the matter is Putin's trying to take over. I mean, the farming area that he's taken over is pretty lucrative, and the rare earth minerals, which, oh, by the way, we have those rare earth minerals in America, but they won't let us harvest them because they are ecological disasters. So they want that in Congo or Ukraine or somewhere that's not America. But it's amazing that they can come out and say things like this that confirms every conspiracy theory you have for the nature of war. And nobody's losing their mind. It was funny you say that. I saw that and I retweeted it as soon as I saw it. I'm like, this is insane. They're going to blow up the world to keep Russia away from lithium or whatever's over there, which doesn't even work. Like we've talked about the electric vehicle scam. It my mind shattered. And I'm like, how do like this guy went on a nationwide TV show and said this? He belongs in jail.
And let's not forget that who started this.
Right.
You know, Russia coming in and taking over. Russia reacted. Russia was getting missiles launched, rockets launched at it from Ukraine. And Victoria was over there too at the time. She
Right.
always is she's always nearby where there's a lot of dead bodies around. But yeah, this was started by Ukraine. It wasn't started by Russia. If Russia wanted to come out there and conquer it, this would have been over a year ago.
Right.
You know, and that's not what happened. He selectively is doing what he's doing in the Russian speaking areas. And I'm not a big pro-Russia guy, but at this point, you can't be on the side of this if you're being honest with yourself.
Well, and they're trying to get us drug into this war.
Oh, yeah.
Even worse than it is, because it's kind of like when you're watching football and the guy that retaliates is the guy that gets blamed. And if you look, you hit the nail on the head where we kept provoking Russia. They were sending missiles. A lot of those cities and boroughs along the border wanted to join Russia instead of Ukraine. They are ethnic Russians. They identify.
They were persecuted by the
Right.
Ukrainians.
Yeah, they are traditional Christians, and they're like, hey, we'll take the Russian government over the LGBTQIA government in Ukraine. And Russia then takes a definitive action. They're like, oh, Russia started it. It's just like what we're doing. We've escalated, sending him hundreds of millions of dollars, and now we're sending weapons to them that they get to shoot into Russia. So it's like, okay, guys, we're going to pay for it. We're going to build the missile system. We'll program it. We'll help teach you where to put it. So you just set it down and hit the button and it'll go launch a missile into Russia. And you're going to act like we're not involved.
And what they're doing here, and I'm waiting for this, at some point in time, Vladimir Putin has to react or they're going to kill him.
Right.
I mean, that's the way these countries work.
Right.
So we're forced, and they know that at the State Department.
Right.
They're forcing his hand. So he takes somebody out, and then that's going to be the trigger that everybody and their mother in Congress is going to stand up waving the Ukrainian flags, and we're going to war. And
Right.
guess what? The only way that ends is with glowing.
Right.
It's the only way it ends. You've seen our troops.
Right.
You know, I mean, it'll be a race to get there. And Lindsey Graham and McCall and all the rest of them will be. Mitch McConnell will be waving the flag. It's disgusting. It's sickening, and I'm not playing this time.
Well, yeah, and at what point does Russia have a right to retaliate? And the situation I described, this is where we're at, folks. We're doing everything but putting the finger on the button to shoot missiles into Russia. And if you're a Russian citizen and you know that, at what point are you going to force your government to say,
Right.
you know what?
Make it stop.
You need to make it stop. And it gets worse too, because imagine in these other countries, we talk about like they see the truth. They see Joe Biden at the D-Day thing looking like a confused old man.
That was hard to take.
Yeah. Well, and you see all that, and then if you're a Russian citizen, you got to be like, why are we letting these clowns do that? Why are we letting them put missile systems in Ukraine that they pay for? All they need to do is push the button, and then it shoots a missile into Russia. Why do we do that?
And you have to look at some historical perspective of this too. I thought about this after we passed over it as part of the analysis, but when you've got these provinces in Ukraine that are ethnic Russian provinces,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got Ukrainians in these provinces that are Nazis, the Azov battalions and things like that, literal Nazis. And then you have to look back at the history of the Nazis and the Russian people. The Russian people, regardless of the politics of it, just on the field, the Russians absorbed the majority of the Nazi attack
Oh, right.
by far.
Yep.
They had millions killed by the very Nazis in Ukraine, some of them.
Right.
You got to keep that in mind. That's why I said it was insane to send M1 tanks over there, so they can roll in with the panzers of the Third Reich. Because that's what the people in Russia are thinking.
Right. Well, and in America, we have such a bizarre view of this, because you don't even see states realign borders. Although we talked about in Oregon, they're looking to, half the state's looking to go join Idaho, which is phenomenal. And I hope Minnesota does that. Like take my part of the state and send me to North Dakota or South Dakota, because Minnesota as a whole, no, it's controlled by these crazy left-wing folks. But in Europe, borders change generationally. There's conflicts, there's war. But if you look at the ethnic makeup of people along that border, whoever drew that line, they should have drawn it farther to the east, because you shaved off a lot of, there is a definitive divide in Ukraine between your traditional Christian values that tend to fall on the Russian side and your kind of new age leftist stuff, which tends to fall in Kiev.
That banned religion.
Right. Banned religion. And I mean, they're trying to institute socialist policies. They're all into LGBTQ stuff. And most of your average Russians, they just want to raise a family. They want to have kids. They want to get married. They want an economy that functions for them. It's crazy.
Vodka. Yeah, it's something. I was getting ready for today's show, and I saw something that I'm so sick of. I'll just read the headline. Exclusive. Jim Jordan. We will subpoena Alvin Bragg and Matthew Colangelo if needed. I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting tired of this, man. It's not working, Jim. I'm sure he's going on Sean Hannity tonight to talk about it.
The first thing he's going to do, he is going to send them a strongly worded memo. He's going to go on Hannity, talk about the strongly worded memo. Then he's going to send you a text asking you to donate to his campaign so that he can send more strongly worded memos. Then he's going to send a subpoena. Then they're going to ignore the subpoena. And even though Steve Bannon and Navarre are locked up, he's going to send them another nasty memo about the subpoena they ignored and how they should quit ignoring him. Then he gets to go on Hannity and talk about it. And then he gets to send you another text for campaign fundraising.
And obviously people are still watching it.
Right.
So I don't watch that stuff. I can't stomach it anymore. I've said for years, I want this in the courts, man. I don't want it. It doesn't need to be in Congress. They're wasting everybody's time.
Well, and the problem is, if you're going to bring these people in front of Congress and they're not going to do anything with the test, there's no criminal referrals, there's no anything. I mean, Fauci was out there last week. Everybody's like, oh, Fauci's going in front. He admitted to lying. He admitted to all sorts of crimes, and nothing happens to him, and meanwhile, you've got him going after Republicans at all levels for a myriad of reasons. See, I'm kind of over the congressional hearings, although I did see Thomas Massie dropped an interesting idea, and I don't know if it can hold up constitutionally or whatnot, but the House can put in a resolution that says the subpoena the subpoena of Bannon and Navarro were improper.
They were.
Right, they were improper, but evidently his legal theory is that if you pass that resolution in the House, that could help them in their criminal trials. I don't know if that's
it does. It dissolves the subpoenas,
right?
Because they did it against the House rules. Pelosi buffaloed through the rules on that, say you have to have a minority leader,
right,
in there, and they didn't. A co-chair,
right?
And they didn't do that. But the reason Massey did it, that was a fake out too. That was a head fake. Be careful with Massey, folks. That guy's not our friend.
Oh, right.
Massey's part of the DeSantis deception team. And I don't know what they got on him, but they got something on him. And you can look at the guy and tell, oh, yeah, they got something on this guy. You can tell. There's something flaky about him. But that was just because he knows Mike Johnson won't do that.
Right.
So he came out and said, Speaker Johnson can handle this, and we'd be done. Speaker Johnson, they got something on that guy. I don't know what it is. But if you look at his complete 180 on everything before he was speaker, about 2 weeks in to being speaker, He changed on everything.
Right.
Absolutely 100% everything.
Right.
They got him. He is John Boehner.
Yeah, and it's funny too. You think back to what McCarthy said he would do when McCarthy took the job, because those are the same things that Johnson said he'd do. Release all the January 6 tapes, quit funding weaponized government, quit with the omnibus bills. Folks, we're going to be 2 years into this, into the Republicans having control of the House. And I mean, what do we got in us, Hutch? 1 or 2 more omnibus bills before?
Oh, yeah.
I'd have to look up how long the spending's locked into. I think they have one more re-up they have to do before the election, if I remember right.
Oh, that'll go right through.
Right.
Because what you talked about earlier about the economy, that's the reason we're spending $100 trillion a month, or $1 trillion a month, is to keep the fake economy up until after the election.
Right.
You know, that's exactly what that is. I mean, among other things, among other theft and whatnot. But it is, it's tough to see them compromised like that. It gives you a bad feeling in your gut when you see that, man. It's just,
well, what's difficult too, you see what they do against people that stand up for just normal American citizens. And I mean, and that's why how Trump's approaching this election, I think I give his campaign an A+. Even his rallies, his Agenda 47, you know, are all universal things that a large majority of Americans can agree on. The tip thing, whoever came up with that idea, brilliant. Yeah. Like, I love that. Although maybe on tomorrow's show, when we got a little more time, we got to talk about the standards of tipping, because it's so weird now that like tipping
skyrocketed during COVID, man.
Yeah, it got out of control. And then I don't mind tipping for somebody that does great service, but like I got a tree getting cut down on Wednesday. Do I tip the guy? Do I not? Like, some of this tipping stuff's out of control. And then if you do tip him, the poor guy's got to give a big chunk to the federal government.
Well, the thing a lot of people don't realize is in the restaurant industry, I guess it's still like this. They make like $2 an hour.
In many states, yeah.
Their salary's not very big. It's because of the tips.
Right.
And the thing I don't like is I don't like that I got a server that's rocking the house and the busboy's going to get half her tips.
Yeah, and that's where tips became salary. And, you know, like my dog groomer, I'll be taking the dogs in this week. She does an excellent job with them. They love her. She fits them on the schedule, like just phenomenal. I tip the heck out of her because she does a great job. I go to a restaurant. We went out to dinner Friday night. Great service. I'll tip the heck out of them. But honestly, if you give me crappy service and my drink's not full and you messed up my order, and I won't take it out on a server if the food's not great because they didn't cook it. But yeah, like I think we need to get back as a society to that whole concept of tipping and not as an income. And now you go like order at some restaurants and there's like no human contact. And it's like, how much do you want to tip? It's like, are you kidding me? Why would I tip anything?
Yeah, I just caught myself doing that. I was at the Chinese restaurant the other day that shut down its dining room, and now it's just an assembly line, you know, takeouts. And I tipped her. I went, why did I just tip her?
Right. I don't mind. I will explore old man topics like this tomorrow. Folks, bring your tipping suggestions. We'll get the chat going. We'll talk about when you tip, when you don't. Now that they're not going to be taxed.
And then Wednesday, we'll get Wayne Dupree back. Let's go to final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Hey, folks. Make sure Hutch and I started with the show, and I can't stress this enough. We cover a lot of scary things, dire things, and we're not saying don't be informed, and we're not saying don't be prepared, but make sure you take time, go outside and feel the grass, take a walk. I tell you, the single best thing for my wife and my mental sanity is going out. Like I mentioned on Friday, last week on Thursday, like we're starting to play Pokemon Go. It's a stupid game that makes you walk around and go in parks and all that stuff. But if that's not part of your day, if you aren't budgeting a half hour, 45 minutes, let me go on a walk, let me get outside, add that to your day. Thank me later.
You know, I was, what I'm doing in that area is getting back into amateur radio for the first time in 30 years.
Excellent.
And a guy asked me, I was on a net, and a guy asked me something about, don't I have a podcast? And what's it about? And I said, you know what? We're not going there, man. It's about politics, and I'm keeping that out of this area.
Right.
You know, so that's just the way I did it. Now, my final thoughts, the 51 intelligence officials who called Hunter Biden's hard drive Russia disinformation still will not apologize, despite the laptop being authenticated by Biden's own DOJ. Punishment over there would be in order.
Get Mo.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you tomorrow. For Hutch Bailey Jr. and Jason Robinson and Wayne Dupree, see you tomorrow.
Mike Lindell here, and like you, I see our country being destroyed daily. We face massive economic issues, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, there are people in power who threaten the values that have made our country great. Well, I've been a believer in gold and silver for a long time, and I've searched for years for a partner that shares my values. Well, Genesis Gold Group showed me how easy it is to protect your IRA, 401k, or your retirement with gold and silver. Their faith-driven approach to service and stewardship is one that stands out from the rest.
To get your free definitive gold guide and get started learning more about investing in gold and protecting your retirement from uncertain times, visit treasureandtrust.com now. Fill out the basic contact form and a member of the team will be in touch. Again, that's treasureandtrust.com or call 855-625-7760.